Welcome to EWTN Vatican Daily. I'm Colleen Carroll Campbell. It's 2 p.m. here in Rome. The top story today, Cardinal Timothy Dolan of New York says he's anxious to get the conclave underway. These were the scenes at Cardinal Dolan's titular church on the outskirts of Rome as he arrived for Mass this morning. There's been widespread speculation in the Italian media this week that the Archbishop of New York is being considered as a possible pope by many of his fellow cardinals, which explains the scrum of cameras and reporters that awaited his arrival at the small parish of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Rome today. Never one to shy away from the cameras, Cardinal Dolan also took time to give an impromptu press conference before Mass.
How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling fine. Does it look like I'm, what are you worried I'm not eating or something?
Good to see you. Are you anxious to get started?
I'm anxious to get started. There was a sense of peace once we decided to start the conclave on Tuesday morning.
How confident are you, Cardinal, you'll be able to discern the guidance of the Holy Spirit and pick
This
the
has
right
been
man?
such a beautiful week of prayer and apostolic fraternity and getting to know each other better. God willing, I'll be home before Palm Sunday. All right? Way to go. You're going to stick around?
Yes.
Will you stick around? Buona domenica.
Our Vatican correspondent, David Eubing, was there. It was quite a scene. Cameras were not allowed inside, but David attended Mass with his family. So, David, what did Cardinal Dolan say in his homily?
Well, Cardinal Dolan had a short homily. He only gave a 4-minute homily, and it was all in Italian, believe it or not. American accented Italian, but Italian.
Right.
He spoke about asking the people of God to pray for the Holy Spirit to descend on the cardinals. And he said that their prayer, our prayer, sustains the church and sustains the cardinals, so that they really need it.
And what about Cardinal O'Malley? I know he also was celebrating Mass today.
Cardinal O'Malley went to his titular church, which is Our Lady of Victories, and he invoked the Holy Spirit as well. He called for the Holy Spirit to descend on the cardinals and to bring the peace and everything, the wisdom that they need to choose the next Holy Father.
And looking toward tomorrow, what can we expect to see around Rome?
Well, tomorrow is a fairly quiet day, but in the evening we have the people that are helping with the conclave, which are audio technicians, and they're going to take an oath of secrecy at 5:30 in the Sistine Chapel. So,
all right. Thank you very much, David.
You're welcome.
Meanwhile, EWTN Vatican Daily has been given special access to the Sistine Chapel, where preparations are well underway for the start of the conclave. The past few days, Vatican staff have been working to prepare this historic chapel for the arrival Tuesday afternoon of the 115 elector cardinals. They'll sit at these tables currently being installed. It's from there that each man will rise to cast a vote at the high altar. And this is the famous chimney from which the white smoke will eventually emerge. Note the two stoves. The one on the right is for burning ballot papers. The one on the left is for burning chemicals to produce either the white or the black smoke. And with us today is our EWTN Vatican Daily analyst, Father Raymond D'Souza, and Dr. Timothy O'Donnell, president of Christendom College in Virginia. Gentlemen, your reactions? We'll start with you, Father Raymond.
Well, I was out at 2 masses this morning, the one with Cardinal O'Malley at Santa Maria della Vittoria. They allowed cameras in there. There were so many jammed in there, it was hard for the people to make their way up for communion. The priest there is an Italian priest and gave a very sort of fulsome welcome and said that he hoped it was the last visit that Cardinal O'Malley would make as a cardinal and would come back soon after, and that was probably said in many churches. And then I went over to a cardinal who isn't in the buzz, and that was a rather more serene and tranquil affair at St. Patrick's Church here. That's Cardinal Collins of Toronto, and there was just a few well-wishers, and it wasn't quite the media circus there, and but they both prayed for the same thing and are looking forward to the conclave getting underway on Tuesday.
And Dr. O'Donnell?
I attended Mass at Santo Spirito in Sassi. I figured that'd be a great place to go and invoke the Holy Spirit.
Yeah.
Yes, as a matter of fact. But we had a group from the college, pilgrims over here, and we were actually the last group to be in the Sistine Chapel the night before they closed.
Wow.
And so my whole thought, whenever I think about the Sistine and what's going on there, is that great fresco of Michelangelo, The Last Judgment. And in such a concrete, vivid way, you have meditation on the 4 last things: death, judgment, heaven and hell, and all of those are vividly portrayed in that fresco. And to think that that's where the cardinals will be going, taking their oath, looking at that, contemplating the last things, and taking that oath that this is the man they believe best capable to occupy the shoes of the fisherman. It's going to be a great moment for the church.
Interesting. Thank you both. Well, now, if there's one issue that's likely to be at the top of the new Pope's agenda, it's the new evangelization. That's the attempt to reintroduce the person of Jesus Christ to historically Christian countries that have grown forgetful of or indifferent to him. These were the scenes in a sunny St. Peter's Square last October as Pope Benedict XVI opened the Year of Faith. He encouraged the bishops of the world to use this year-long event to embrace the challenge of the new evangelization. It will now fall to his successor to oversee the remainder of this Year of Faith and roll out the new evangelization across the globe. And I'm delighted to say that we're now joined by the man who for the past 3 years has been the president of the Vatican's Pontifical Council for the New Evangelization. He's Archbishop Salvatore Fisichella. Welcome, Archbishop.
Thank you.
Let's begin with this Year of Faith. Obviously, it was rolled out under Pope Benedict XVI, but he won't be there to sort of see the end of it. So does it continue, and if so, how?
Yes, absolutely. We cannot forget also that the Year of Faith, it was made by Benedict XVI in order to remember the 50th anniversary of the beginning of the Vatican II, the Council. Mm-hmm. And for this reason, we will continue also with the next Pope, because the Year of Faith is an event in order to remember that, first of all, the Christians, the Catholics, they need to be always strengthened in faith and to be sustained in their witness of faith. So especially in this moment, we cannot forget that we are in a peculiar moment, in a big crisis of faith, and this year can be an occasion and a proposal, occasion for us and a proposal to show that to be Christian is still very important for life, and to give a scene of our life, so a sense of our life.
Yes. What about the sense of the new evangelization being more of a Western phenomenon? I think at least those of us in North America and Western Europe tend to think of it in that context. But is it different in different parts of the world in terms of what that means, new evangelization?
Well, new evangelization is a project. New evangelization is a pastoral project. It means that the Church in the next future should be able once again to announce Jesus Christ, a risen Jesus Christ. And for this reason, we need also to understand that our announcing is made in different societies. Of course, there is a challenge for us, and not just for the Western culture, but for the world. In the last synod on new evangelization, last October, many bishops from Africa, from India, they said in a very clear way, we need a new evangelization, because after the second, third generation, the Church still to be in this necessity and urgence for new evangelization.
And you mentioned that it's a project. It's very much been, I think, seen as an intellectual project, faith and reason coming together. So to what extent will the intellectual caliber of the next Pope be an important, to what extent will the intellectual abilities and gifts be important to looking at candidates?
But you know, I think that before looking to the natural resources that we have, we should be able to look on our spiritual capacity. So, I mean, the next Pope, he knows already what the successor of Peter should be able to do, and first of all, he is called to confirm everybody, all Christians in faith, in the same faith. So this is the most important thing. But of course there is several and different ways for that, and the relationship between faith and reason is important, but just for one reason, because the reason is the universal condition in order to communicate with everybody. So sometimes we have not the same faith, but we have a common reason, and in our dialogue with the world we can be able also to initiate this possibility to be able to propose our faith.
And do you sense a hunger among people for this new evangelization in your work?
I think that there is a lot of enthusiasm on that, and that make our work, that is difficult, we cannot forget that it's a very difficult work, but it make our work more interesting and more enthusiastic too. So.
And you must have a global overview of the fruits of this work. What are you seeing in your role?
Well, there is a very, very general possibilities, but I think that the new evangelization should be incarnate in the different cultures. So for this reason, we need to have a common project, a common language. That means the language of announcing once again Jesus Christ, but we should be also able to enter into the different of cultures and to understand it, but also to be able to transform it in order to give a great possibility for the future.
And just finally, for the faithful watching at home, anything you'd say to them to contribute to this new evangelization?
I think so, because faith is necessary for life. Faith is not just one moment in our life, but is an engagement of our life in order to show that when we are with the great main question in our life, who am I, where I'm going, if there is a life after this life. So probably faith is the essential in order to find the right and the true answer.
Thank you so much for joining us. Well, as we've already heard, there's widespread speculation here in Rome that the new Holy Father, dealing with the new evangelization and other issues, may hail from either the U.S. or Canada. Regardless of who's elected, what challenges and opportunities will the new Pope encounter in the United States? In order to gauge opinion, we spent a morning with this young American seminarian in Rome. This is 26-year-old Deacon Charles Sampson from St. Louis. He's due to be ordained in May. That will make him one of the first new priests under the new Pope. EWTN Vatican Daily caught up with him as he assisted at Mass at one of Rome's most historic churches, Santa Pudenziana, in the company of his fellow U.S. seminarians and hundreds of other young Americans in Rome.
I'm feeling really excited. The countdown has already begun. I've made all the preparations that I need. I'll be making a retreat soon. I just feel very confident, very happy that the Lord has given me this vocation, and I feel just very relaxed. This is what God has wanted me to do, and this is what I'm doing. I think that the legacy that Benedict leaves to the Church in the United States really is what was encapsulated in his first public discourse as Pope and his last public discourse as Pope, and that is the necessity of the personal encounter with Christ. I have been formed really in the seminary in my time under the pontificate of Benedict XVI. I really do feel like we are the generation of Pope Benedict in terms of our seminary formation, but we have an open heart and we will welcome this new Pope with open arms. It's a very exciting time. I'm very optimistic for the future of the Church in America on all age levels, in fact. In particular among the youth especially, I can say from personal experience that their loyalty and their devotion to the Church is very strong. The only masses in which I see consistently the first two pews filled up are the youth masses. I'm very excited to be a priest. I'm very optimistic for the generations of priests ahead. And to be honest, the numbers are going up, slowly, but they are going up. And more importantly than the numbers, really is the quality of priests that are being ordained. Looking around and meeting, there are 250 seminarians in my seminary here. And I'm just really amazed by how much they pray, how much they study, and how just good human beings they are. Really being good bridges between God and man. Very excited.
Well, the man responsible for spiritual direction at the Pontifical North American College here in Rome is Father Austin Vetter. He joins me now. Welcome, Father.
Thank you so much. It's good to be with you.
Thank you. To what extent are young men like Deacon Charles typical of the fellows you're directing at the NAC?
He really is typical. It is amazing. The goodness, God has been so good to the whole church, especially for us. We've been very blessed, and they're such good men. They're so generous. They're so open. They give themselves completely, and they really have a docility to be obedient to what Christ is asking, what the church is asking, and that's a wonderful place to start. Right. Coming with an open heart and not having all the answers when they get here. So it's wonderful.
And what's your sense of the vocations crisis that we hear so much about? Are you seeing change on the horizon in terms of better numbers?
Yes. Obviously, around the world, that's the case, but also in the United States, the last numbers that they had from 2011, there were just over 3,600 seminarians, which is a 4% increase from the year before, and the highest since 1989. So it's the highest in 20 years. So I think, please God, we're maybe making a turn there.
And do you think those numbers are indicative of a wider revival, especially in the United States, as we're talking about America?
I think so. You know, I really do believe that in the mystical body, there's such a mystery to what God is doing at any particular time, any era in the life of the church. And I do think that there is wonderful springtime in the United States, but I think it's for the whole mystical body. Just like in one era, maybe it was France, and then Spain, and Portugal, and so thanks be to God, these are good days for us, but they're important days as well, for us to make sure that we don't lose focus of what we're about, which is to do God's will and to serve His church as priests.
And what about the question of religious liberty? This is huge right now in the United States, especially with the HHS mandate promoted by the Obama administration. Is that affecting this? I mean, to what extent do you think these young folks are prepared to deal with those kind of challenges?
Well, it's the culture they live in. So they're very gifted, they're very bright. We have a very bright group. And so they understand the culture in which they're in, knowing that on the one hand, that in the public arena, that the church has to make our case that religious liberty is a right that we have, that is God-given and not given by any particular state. And that, so on the one hand, to make sure that we make that our case for the sake of all the people of our country, but also on the other hand then, not to lose focus that the gift of faith is just that, a gift. And it may mean at some times that even if religious liberty is not given as freely as we would like in society, that can't be an excuse for us not to live our faith. And it may mean that it's going to take some sacrifice and even maybe some persecution, but that's always been the case in the life of the church, and we shouldn't think that we are going to be immune from it necessarily because we happen to live in America. And so it's to really help all of us to, on the one hand, to stay with that in the public forum, making our case, and on the other hand, not losing focus that we are called to be saints, and that we are called to live our faith and to lead even amidst persecution that might come our way.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. It's been delightful. God bless you.
Thank you. All right, I think I'll ask you a bit about this. You both obviously know a lot about the topic. Dr. O'Donnell, what's your sense of the new evangelization as you see it as a college president?
Well, I think it's interesting. Obviously, we have a predominantly very powerful secular culture, and so a lot of times reaction to the faith can be everything from indifference to outright hostility. Yet man is made for truth, the truth that is written on our hearts. And so I think when the truth is proposed concretely in a joyful, beautiful way, it has an innate power to attract. One of my favorite quotes from John Paul II was, he said, "Don't go around condemning errors. There are too many of them. There is an intrinsic power that lies in the truth, that if you speak the truth with its beauty and power, you can really touch people. And whether it's vocations or religious liberty, we're not going to get it right unless we get family life right once again. Because the key to the church, the key to vocations is the family. And so even though it's a dark time, you know, light shines more brightly in the darkness. So I think the Year of Faith is this great opportunity whereby evangelizing our church and getting Catholics to understand more deeply, even some of the more difficult truths about our faith, whether it be contraception or whatever, can lead us to a deeper bearing witness. And I think people will begin to see that there's a joyfulness and a goodness that is found there that really is attractive and very compelling. But a lot of times we have to get over that initial sort of indifference by proposing what is really good and really beautiful. And I think this Year of Faith is a great opportunity for us to kind of get our act together so that we can again be a leaven in society and bear witness through our family life and through our vocations.
Father Raymond?
Well, Dr. Donald just mentioned about being joyful witnesses, and this is Laetare Sunday, one of the 2 Sundays in the year dedicated to joy. And Cardinal Collins made the point this morning that the announcement of the new Pope is, the Gaudium Magnum, the great joy that comes. And he said, well, that's what we're all looking forward to this week, but that joy is supposed to be part of the daily life of the Christian. We get 2 Sundays to be reminded of that. But the new evangelization will only really advance if it's a daily part of the life of Christian disciples, because you can be attracted to truth, but usually you're attracted to someone who's speaking the truth if the person has some joy, or if failing joy, at least being cheerful.
And will it make you're from Canada, do you think it'll make a difference if the next Pope is Canadian or American?
Yes, we'll be very excited about that. But it doesn't, you can have a very popular celebrity that people don't follow. So the challenge, if the Pope comes from a country for the first time, like Canada, the United States, would be that he's not only a celebrity that the country is proud of because he's a famous person, but that the message might be heard better there. And certainly if it was a Canadian, we would hope that the message would be heard better. Obviously, we'd be very excited, very proud of him as one of our countrymen, but for the sake of the evangelization is not celebrity. So we would hope the message would be heard better. But
and be a father for everybody, for all people.
Yes, but especially the Canadians.
Or the Americans, you never know.
Or the
Americans. Good luck on the hockey front. Good luck on the hockey front.
And your sense, Dr. O'Donnell, of that impact that would have an American Pope or a Canadian Pope?
Well,
North American, we could just
Well, it certainly
generalize.
would have a great impact on tourism in Italy, so that would be all these Americans coming to Italy. But I think these things, oftentimes there's an old expression that he who enters the conclave as Pope leaves as a cardinal. And I think that's true. I mean, I remember I was here for John Paul's election, and when he was announced, everyone had their newspaper and they had the top 30 candidates. Carroll was not in anyone's paper. So I think we'll be surprised, regardless of who it is. I think this is a time for the mystical body to be at prayer, reflecting, showing our support for the cardinals, and reminding ourselves that this is a communion of love, and we need to support the man who will be given to us as the sign of Christ's love to us. And whoever that will be, whether it's North American, African, an Italian, whatever, Eastern Europe, it doesn't matter. We will rally around that man.
Father Raymond, do you, from your perspective, to what extent is the U.S. seen as sort of a trailblazer in the new evangelization that we've been discussing?
I think there's certain things that go on in the United States that are very admirable about the sort of boldness with which the faith is proclaimed. At the same time, it's true that if you look at what the church, if you look at the church's programs in the United States, I think people around the world are very admiring of the zeal for catechesis, for evangelization, for public witness. If you look at American culture, I think the picture is very discouraging. And so when people say, what's the state of the United States? They might say, well, the church seems very vibrant, but at the same time, the culture that we receive from the United States, because the television programs go all around the world, many people would say that this is not a culture that we're interested in imitating. So in terms of what the people see when they see the United States, it depends what they're looking at, and the church is vibrant there, more vibrant than in some other countries. But at the same time, the culture of the United States, and even now the political culture of the United States, I think makes people very worried. So it depends which part of the United States you're looking at.
Interesting. Thank you both. An enormous spiritual lung for humanity. That's how Pope Benedict XVI described the continent of Africa. In November 2011, he delivered a blueprint for the future of the African Church. At a Mass before 80,000 pilgrims in the West African country of Benin, he presented his apostolic exhortation, Africae Munis, or the gift of Africa. It called for reconciliation, justice, and peace. The job of bringing that vision to fruition will now fall to his successor. One man with a unique perspective on that is Father Cesar Atuire. He's from Ghana in West Africa, and he's the boss of the Vatican's in-house travel agency until earlier this year. So, Father, tell us a bit about the church in Africa. What happens to this African blueprint now that Pope Benedict XVI is no longer in the chair of Peter?
Well, the African church represents, let's say, the youth of the church. We're talking new evangelization in Europe. But Africa is actually living the new evangelization because the church is barely, the modern church is barely 100 years old in Africa. It's a church that is full of youth, vibrant. I mean, it's very vibrant, so much that I remember when Pope Benedict returned after the visit to Benin, everyone who met him and the people in his entourage said the Pope returned almost younger after visiting Africa because he was so full of energy. And I think the concept of the African church as a lung for the universal church is simply that to infuse the church again, to tell us that, look, it's great to be Catholic. I mean, most of my relatives and friends in Ghana drive around with stickers on their cars saying, I'm proud to be Catholic. That's what it means. And it's not a position against other people, but it's just the joy of being a Catholic.
And what is this blueprint for Africa, the church's vision for Africa?
Well, the church's vision for Africa is at the moment, something that is going through a stage of evolution. John Paul II, gave an exhortation after the first synod of the Church of Africa, talking about the church as a family. Now, in this new document, Africae Munus, we're talking about reconciliation and deep conversion of the church, because alongside with the enthusiasm, we need to make sure that the Christian values are eradicated in Africa. And that's why you're talking about conversion, because there is some degree of like a dual kind of expression of the faith, whereby people are still attached to their traditional beliefs, yet at the same time they profess to be Christian. So we need a deeper conversion. And at the same time, the church needs to be active on social issues in order to make the African nations that are more just, that are fair, and where people can actually live without the scourges of poverty, oppression, and conflict.
And what can we as Christians in the West learn from Africa, especially for the new evangelization?
Especially for the new evangelization, one of the first things I think is the fact that, it's great to be a Christian. In Africa, we receive the gift, we receive the faith as a gift, and we celebrate it. That's one thing. Secondly, I think one of the great elements of the African continent is that it's a continent of hope. We look to the future, and we can only see that things will get better in the future. And one of the great things, at least I find in Europe, is that when I talk to the younger generations, they look to the future with a great deal of discouragement, with disillusionment. And I think recovering the dimension of hope is very important, because it's something that spurs the people to actually go forward.
And there's been some speculation, of course, about a pope from Africa. Any thoughts on that, or what he might bring if there were a pope from Africa?
Well, I think, a pope from Africa, everything is possible. We cannot limit what the Holy Spirit can do. I happen to know quite a number of the African cardinals who are going into conclave now. I'm not here to say let's vote for an African pope, or let's get the best guy who can do the job for the church. The church needs it. But in any case, an African pope, I think, would be something that would be interesting, because to some extent, you see, in the West, we're used to classifying the church between people who are conservative, people who are liberal, people who are orthodox. An African will mix up all these things, because the Africans, on the one hand, sometimes they can be very, very conservative on doctrine, and at the same time, on social issues, he might take liberal positions, and he's just going to confuse all of us. But it will be very interesting.
Well, thanks so much for joining us. Well, that's all for now, but join us at the same time tomorrow for more of the latest news and commentary from the heart of Rome. I'm Colleen Carroll Campbell, and on behalf of all of us here at EWTN, thank you for watching EWTN Vatican Daily. We'll see you next time.
And that brings us to the conclusion of the latest edition of Vatican Daily with Colleen Carroll Campbell. Once again, I want to remind you here from EWTN that the conclave is set to begin Tuesday, March 12th. And kicking things off will be the Holy Mass for the election of the Supreme Pontiff in the morning, and the afternoon procession of the cardinal electors to the Sistine Chapel. Check out our website, EWTN.com, for the latest in scheduling information, especially in your time zone. And of course, Colleen's program airs each day at 9 a.m. Look for the encore at 5 p.m. And of course, later today, we also have our EWTN Radio Live from the Eternal City each morning at 10 a.m. That's with Tom Price and Elena Rodriguez. And a special edition of Rome Dispatch, it returns with Joan Lewis at 11 a.m. today, encoring tonight at 9 p.m. Eastern. A full schedule still ahead. We're with you throughout. Stay with us right here at EWTN for the most complete coverage anywhere on the interregnum and the conclave. Thank you.